Hey, here we are. I'm Ruth Sheehan.
And I'm Danielle Tully.
And this is a little thing we call Putting the Real in Real Estate. Today's topic is a favorite. It's horror stories. So we always say...
Yes, and this is to teach you something, not to, it's to say that no matter how good we are or how good somebody else is, that things can still happen that nobody was expecting. It's just kind of human nature.
And really that's the point, isn't it? Because sometimes I think, gosh, I wonder if I should warn people about all the things that could go wrong. But you couldn't.
Yes.
Like you could never, and you'll see when we talk about some of these things, could never have been thought of if we listed this laundry list for every transaction we had. People would run in the other direction and they would never buy or sell a house. So we're going to tell you now, so you forget most of it by the time it's your turn. Kind of like when you're pregnant with your second child. Yeah.
I have no recollection. You just got what you wanted in the end, right?
And I think this is why it's important to have an experienced team, not because any of us have been through everything, because it would be impossible, but because we've been through enough that we expect something to happen, and we hopefully know how to pivot and make it not a catastrophe.
Yeah.
So when, and there are a couple of these instances have to do with an inexperienced professional
Hi, Mom.
that could have, hi, Kathy, could have,
she didn't see us last week because she was in the hospital, in the ER. And she's like,
I know, she didn't even tell us.
It's okay.
But that's really hardly an excuse to miss our show.
I mean, what else are you doing in an ER? I mean,
right.
Whatever they had on the TV was boring.
Probably. She could have probably screencast our show and shared it with the rest of the patients. By the way, if anyone's an inventor out there, I've invented something, but I can't actually make it exist. So for people doing live feeds that end up doing it from their car, like I am right now, we need a little like Velcro thing here that pulls down behind you, and it could either be a green screen or it could be a fake office look kind of thing that just comes down from the ceiling of your car right behind you while you do your Facebook Live. You can have that. You can invent it, and just all I ask is that you send me one.
No worries.
To put it on Shark Tank. You don't even have to give me credit. Just give me one. So we've got some horror stories for you. Some have happened to us. Some have happened to colleagues. We're not going to tell you which is which. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. And don't assume that you know anybody that this happened to, because we're not saying.
Except the first one. I will admit to it being me, like me personally. But there was a silver lining at the end. Well, a couple of silver linings at the end. So do you want me to kick it off?
Tell us that story.
Okay. So this wasn't at the closing table, but it was when my husband and I were going to buy our home in Illinois after moving back from Georgia. And we had been dealing with a lender for probably a year and a half or so. And he was letting us know when we were eligible to buy. And so we finally got it. We found a house that we really, really loved down the street from where we lived at the time, and had the whole house packed, waiting for that clear to close time for the next day, or not clear to close, waiting for the closing date for the next day, and got the call that we were never eligible for the loan. It was awful. the underwriters, he wasn't even around. The underwriters called my Lisa, my friend, and let her know, nope. And but the silver lining, one of the very few silver linings of that event was I got to meet Mark, my awesome lender, right? Mark Muleson. Hello, Mark, if you're watching. And we've had a partnership ever since. And also, I really like my current house a lot better.
So where did you get that lender? The first one.
It was somebody who was referred to me, but my attorney, James Bernicki, also, he is the one who tried to save the day, and he's like, talk to Mark. Maybe Mark can help you. And Mark sat us down and he said, I'm sorry to tell you, but you never should have been told at this moment that you could afford this. Or
so that person was referred by a friend?
Yes.
And we always, we appreciate friend referrals. We ask for friend referrals. Obviously, if we work for you, we want to work with your friends too. But when we're talking about lenders and attorneys, inspectors, one of the things that I tell people and I stress is most people buy and sell a house every, handful of years at most, right? So they may have had a good experience with someone, and that doesn't mean that service provider is capable of lots of good experiences. So when you talk to us, we sell dozens of homes every year. So we meet dozens of home inspectors. We meet dozens of lenders. We meet dozens of attorneys. We know who's great, who's good, and who's neither. So trust us on that, because all we really care about in you picking a teammate is that we get you to the closing table and you avoid all of this nonsense. So my next story is about someone who had a referral from a friend and did not get the referral to the lender from their realtor. And it ended up being a horrific experience. The transaction did not go smoothly all the way through. And then at the closing table, when the client decided to share feelings about the job with the lender stood up, shouted at the client, called names, swore in a relatively busy office, shouted out the borrower's credit score, and said, I don't care if you close, and left.
Yikes.
So sometimes friend recommendations, as much as we can love them, you still need to take the next step and make sure that the person your friend is referring you to is competent and professional. So hopefully we always measure up to that. But
there are some that have nothing to do with referrals. It's just the stressful situation, right? Home buying is one of those top 5 life stressors out there. And sometimes at the end, people can be afraid and at their wits' end and do some unpredictable or crazy things, or maybe sometimes not so crazy. And it just is like being prepared is important too. I had a family member who, the day of closing, their buyers decided they were getting a divorce instead of buying a house. So I don't know. I don't think they were forced to buy it. It was in a different area. It was not the Chicagoland area. It was in Illinois, but not up here. And I think I would have tried to force that a bit as the seller's agent, because that's their prerogative. You now own a house that you can figure out how to divide. But different areas have different rights and things that they do.
Well, so we do always have that financing contingency. So if something happens that isn't going to allow the financing to happen, that can scuttle the deal even at the last minute. So it's possible, that whatever the circumstances of their divorce were could have changed their financial position and put them in a place where they wouldn't be able to buy. As a matter of fact, that leads us right in to my next story about a couple sitting at the closing table, waiting. They signed all the papers. They're waiting to hear that the loan funded, and the closer gets a phone call from the underwriter who just reran credit at the closing table. This happens, and it's been happening a lot this past year with all of the craziness going on around COVID. The buyers thought that they would sneak down to the furniture store and max out their credit cards with new furniture for their new house. And they ended up at the end of the day with a lot of new furniture and no place to put it because the house didn't close. So when your lender tells you not to make any purchases without asking them, not to deposit any money in your checking account, people don't understand why that's a problem. You deposit $5,000, your lender needs to know where it came from, and they need to be able to track it. You have to look at your lender as a teammate, and you have to tell them everything.
Yes.
They will find out.
Yes.
They have ways.
Yes. There were a few stories I've heard from other agents that were interesting. They will find everything. And it's not, I mean, it's regulation, it's protecting, the investor's money, where it be a bank or whatever the institution is that's buying the loan. So they do very thorough background checks and credit checks and things like that. So
and a lot of it has to do with money laundering laws.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you watch Ozark, he tells you, you get all that cash, you can't do a damn thing with it. So,
nope. So, but now, yes. So there were a couple stories that we were looking at that people had been married and divorced before. So it'll have your previous names known as, sometimes it's stupid credit card applications that they drop the last couple letters of your name,
misspellings or middle initial, no middle initial,
right? Taking it off, whatever. So there's usually a whole list of names that you're also known as,
but a whole brand new name that your husband never knew about might cause a few problems.
And she had to own up to the fact that her last name had changed because she had been married before. There was also, because again, where is your money going and what's coming in and out of your accounts, there was child support being taken out of somebody's records, his paycheck every month that the wife had no idea about. So those did close. Don't know how long they stayed together after that.
Exactly. That's the just after closing divorce filing.
Yes. Absolutely.
So one I had that could not have ever been, this is not something you could ever say, hey, this might happen. And unfortunately, it was a Friday afternoon when this happened. Again, going back to those federal laws, when a large chunk of money is being wired, it needs to, I'm going to use the word they use, even though I have no idea what it means. It needs to ping off the Fed. So they send it to Washington, I'm assuming, where somebody who works for the federal government takes a look at it, decides it's not an Ozark situation, and says this money can go through. And that typically, I think, takes a relatively short amount of time. However, this happened to come up at the end of the day on a Friday. And when there you go, it goes through the Fed bank first. When it got to the Fed, they found that the borrowers' names were on the terrorist watch list. And they stopped the wire. Now, they were not the borrowers. I mean, the borrowers were not terrorists, but they had the same names as somebody on the list. And so in that case, they have to do some investigation and make sure that these are not those people. However, when it's the end of the day on a Friday and you're in a government office, you don't stay and just get that taken care of
Help
before you
them,
come home, I guess.
work out their housing situation. That's not what the employee did.
So the poor people were left with their life on a truck, finding hotel accommodations for a holiday weekend before they could move in, and the seller was left without being able to have the cash to move on until Tuesday. So that's one of those things when we say we can't come up with everything, that could never have been foreseen.
No.
Unless we happen to have a list of people on that list.
Yes. Another thing, you have to be, when this is serious business, right? So even though at the closing table you're feeling a bit better, right? Like all the stresses of the last 6, 7, however many weeks that, you've been in escrow and trying to go through the process. And these days, if you're a buyer, it's been much, much longer, possibly, than just the 4 or 5 weeks to close. There was a situation where you go through piles and piles and piles of documents. And at one point, the attorney said, you attest that you are signing these documents on your own free will and not under distress. And the buyers joked, oh yeah, we are. And the attorney went, with all of the paperwork they've already were combing through, asking a million details. So they freaked out a little bit, decided that was not a good joke. And so the closer had to restart all the paperwork again, and they did not say a word during that signing process. So
that reminds me of when my brother was joking with the TSA agent. You just don't.
Yeah, no. There's certain situations where you just go, I'm going to keep my head down and just do what I need to do. Apparently that was not the time to joke.
No, and that attorney was having none of it.
No, probably because I got the impression that it was tedious up until that point.
Uh-huh.
It had just been a breaking point. Another one of those getting up and saying I don't care if you close situations.
So there's tons more, but we just wanted to give an example of the variety of things that can happen, even when everyone, for the most part, is acting in good faith and with goodwill. Things can go sideways. The most important thing is, and we're hearing a lot today. As a matter of fact, I got involved in a conversation on Facebook I probably should have left alone, but the question was, do you need to hire an agent in this market? It's pretty easy to sell a house, which I found hilarious.
Yes.
And two of the people in the conversation were insurance agents, and they both said that it really wasn't necessary if you were selling to have an agent. And I said, well, I just wrote my own insurance policy. That was easy. So they didn't agree with me. But I just closed on a house we had to sell 4 times. You never know if it's going to be easy. This is not an easy market to sell a house, by the way. It's easy to get buyers. Correct. It's not easy to get them closed. And our work starts when we bring buyer and seller together. Like, that's the easy part. So when you hear about these horror stories, whether they happen sometimes is out of everyone's control. Sometimes it's not. But whether they're solved is usually within your team's control. So make sure you have a team. If it's not us, and I don't know why it wouldn't be unless you don't live near us, but if it's not us.
A great agent through us. In fact, I just reached out to my cousin Jenny in Springfield to see if she could help a potential buyer that may be looking in her area. So we have people all over Illinois. and outside.
Those people that I just sold their house 4 times, they're moving to another state. I hooked them up with Amy, who's awesome, and we have colleagues all over the country. But we will only set you up with an agent who we feel works like us, who cares like we do, and who can solve these kinds of problems when they arise. Because nobody can guarantee you that this stuff is not going to come up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as always, have a great weekend. It's supposed to be beautiful. I think maybe rain on Sunday. But yeah, I'm excited to go out. And yesterday was a really nice day. It ended up being a nice day. I had a nice walk to go pick up my car. But it was, so have a wonderful weekend. And actually, I think next week is supposed to be great too. So, and we have a bonus Friday in April. There's 5 Fridays, so you get us 5 times this month. Woohoo!
I should have anticipated that and then like changed my paycheck schedule, given myself a paycheck every Friday, and then I would get an extra one. I had a job with a paycheck once, and that was awesome when that happened.
Yes. Anyway, all right. Well, have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, if you know anybody interested in buying and selling, we are here to chat and help them and see what we can do.
Talk to you next week, if not sooner.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Did you just pull your ear like Carol Burnett?
Yeah. There you go.
I'm so glad we had this time together.